All right, then, I'm calling the meeting to order, and I'm really happy to have those of you that are on. I think we have a hardcore good group of people today, and we have a lot of great information. First of all, Sergeant Smith, who has been so willing to join us virtually every single meeting we've held for the last couple of years here, has joined us just now. So I'd like to ask him if he would like to begin and give a report, and we can certainly then ask any questions you might have afterwards. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. I enjoy coming to the meetings and, attending by Zoom. Hopefully before too long we can get back in person and get to see everybody again. I just want to give a quick breakdown of what we did this past month. I don't know if everybody's been here before, but I usually just kind of give a breakdown of the previous month, the goings on, if you will, from the sheriff's office standpoint. And in July, I apologize for that, my radio was up. In July, we had about 411 calls for service out on Siesta Key. 23 of those, about 6%, were classified as a persons or property crimes under the new reporting system. One of the good things that comes from this is that we had 0 thefts or burglaries to vehicles. From the numbers I got from our analyst, which is very rare. I think this may be the first time in the last 2 years we've had that happen. That I've seen when I get the numbers, I look through them and try to see where we're having problem areas at and what we're doing. And I say at every meeting, lock your cars, hide your valuables, lock your doors. It prevents so many vehicle burglaries just by having locked doors, and we didn't have a single one. So I have to give kudos to everybody out there. Sounds like they are, trying to take positive steps to prevent being a victim. The majority of the calls we had were assault calls, like a simple assault. It's basically like a fight or where nobody's really injured that bad, a simple battery, but nothing too crazy. We didn't have a whole lot going on last month, which is great, with the exception of the 4th of July. We were extremely busy out there on 4th of July. I think everybody kind of expects that. Those of you that had a chance to get by the public beach, you got to see the operation the sheriff's office puts in place every year out there. And we've kind of upped that a little bit since I took over. We had about 13 or 14 people assigned to just the parking lot of Siesta Key. And their main goal is to control the flow in and out of the parking lot. It prevents so many other issues, so many people getting hit by cars. It prevents vehicle burglaries. It prevents traffic crashes. And just the overall mood really calms down out there when we take control once people get in the parking lot. We had a very successful 4th of July. We didn't have very many issues at the public beach at all. I know we had a couple issues at some of the accesses, but nothing that was super crazy for us anyways. But that's basically all we got for the month of July. Anybody have any other questions about anything going on? Oh, actually, before I open it up to questions, I spoke with Catherine about this a while ago, and I apologize because I missed last meeting. But if anybody paid attention to the sheriff's office, the sheriff's presentation at the Board of County Commissioners, when we were talking about our budget for this next fiscal year, the sheriff has been approved as well to add 2 new members to our unit out here. Right now, we have 4 full-time deputies and myself, and we're going to be adding 2 new full-time positions out at Siesta Key. So we'll have a total 6 deputies plus myself, 7 people out there to help cover every day of the week. So we look forward to that.
Good.
Thank you.
This time, if anybody has any questions, feel free. I'd be happy to answer them the best I can.
Jean?
Yeah. Joyce, go ahead.
Yes, I did have a member inquire about the beach signs at the beach and some clarification about where people could walk. And for example, if they are confronted by someone from a condo security force or something, what is the protocol? What happens? And could you clarify that for our members?
Yeah. So what the state has a trust with in which they take control over all land and water seaward of what they call the mean high water line. And it's everybody has different numbers. I think it's like a 19 and a half year or 20 year study of the elevations of the high tides and the low tides. You have to have a surveyor come out. They have to get with the state. They provide them those all the numbers for the elevation. They came up with a mean of all those different elevations. So anything landward of that mean high water line, anything towards the shore, back in towards their property, is private property, and it's maintained by that private property owner. Everything seaward of that line, or anything towards the water of that line, is held in the trust by the state and is maintained and controlled by the state, and is considered to be public access for anyone to traverse it and move up and down it.
Okay.
Is that understandable?
It is understandable. What happens if the person walking on the beach disagrees with whoever is there?
Yeah, so there it gets a little tricky, because then we're literally dealing with lines in the sand. And so if the property owner has a survey and has, which a few of the property owners out there do, and have their mean high water line marked, we've met with several of them and looked at their property, at their surveys, and they have to register them with the state. They'll have, a lot of them have them out there marked, and it's easier for us to kind of determine where that line is. But if you're on private property, and we can show that you're on private property, unfortunately, it doesn't matter if the person agrees with it or not. If the property owner doesn't want them on their property, they have to leave. If you're on public property, if you're seaward of that mean high water line, then you're on public property. You have the right to traverse that.
Association, .net.org.
But you've generally seen most of the ones that have surveys marked, and they appear to be appropriate. So the surveys are marked. They generally should be accurate.
Yes, it actually, the ones that we've dealt with, the majority of the time, are actually well within their property line. Like if the mean high water line is at a certain spot, they usually give about another 6 or 7 feet back to provide even more room, just to make sure they're on the same spot. Now, if there isn't a survey, and if there isn't any type of real means to determine where that line is, kind of the rule of thumb for people going to visit the beach and walking on the beach, if you can stay kind of where the wet sand is, where the tide naturally crests up onto the beach, is normally around what we consider a safe area to be within the mean high water line. With that being said, if there is a survey and they do have their mean high water line marked, and the water is above their high water line, then it's still their property. Even though it's in the water, you have to go below or seaward of their property line to traverse it.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
No problem.
Hey, Sergeant Smith, was there any more from Crystal Bailey about camping out along the mean high water line with tents and chairs and blocking everybody else's access?
No, we've had nothing else from that, other than it's public access, it's public property, and like we spoke before, we're not going to physically remove people from public property.
Well, the problem is, as you know, July 4th, somebody else died. Nobody can see their family when they're swimming, when people are camping. And it's not fair that owners can't get to the water, but it's also not fair that other members of the public can't walk down the mean high water line on the south end of the key, because there's tents blocking it. And you guys need to get from A to B. And, I'm sure if you're running blue lights, you can go across private property. But if you're just regular patrol, technically, you should have the people's permission. So my thoughts are, even the lifeguards, that you got to have tents and everything else at the main beach back behind the lifeguard stand so they can see the public. How come that's not being enforced on the private beaches?
Well, again, there's a different county ordinances that deal with public parks and public lands, as far as that the rules at the park being different than being different and on private property and other accesses. But like we talked before, Mike, that's going to have to go probably to the county attorney, or the sheriff's office attorney, and get clarified as to what the how they're going to interpret what those laws say and how that is worded in there as far as the public access and what that means by being public access.
Well, it can't go to a county attorney because the county attorney supports public beach signs on private property, and Crystal Bailey has ties to Denny Madden.
All right,
whole
Mike.
thing.
Mike, thank you very much. Take that out.
Sorry, Marjorie, but people are dying. People
I
are
understand that.
dying.
There's a lot of ways people are dying. So, Mike, enough.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that can be avoided too.
Next.
Thank you. All right, Jan.
Yeah, Sergeant Smith, you mentioned there were 411 calls, and I know you're categorizing them differently these days. Do you categorize any of them relative to hotel houses and complaints that have to do with code enforcement of the single family residences on the Key?
Not specifically, no. I think we spoke about this one other time, and we categorize, our calls for service on the type of call that we go to, not necessarily the type of residence or the type of business or whatever the location. If you were to have, we can get that information for you. If you're able to have an address of where the call happened, that's all public record. If you reach out to the sheriff's office, we can provide that information of how many calls we've gone to. Excuse me. I got a bubble in my throat. We can provide that information of how many calls we've been to there in the past 6 months, a year, all the way back to 2 years, or even longer than that, however long you want. The type of calls we've been to, they're kind of a brief synopsis of what the call was and what happened. But we don't necessarily categorize them as like we went to a hotel or we went to a grocery store or we went to a residence. It's just the address.
Can we get a category? Can we get a category? We have a problem on the Key with hotel houses. So it's not a bit, I would think you would know it's a rental. You could at least ask that question, is the owner there? But we need to get a category so we can tell the commissioners there really is this problem. And you're right, we can go by addresses, but we got 80 people that are doing these reports to you. So we don't have the addresses unless we go look at all their call records. So how can we get a category for hotel houses or calls to residents?
One of the things that residents are frustrated with is that we don't have a collective way to report these infractions so that we're all doing the same thing. Right. Some people are posting on See Click Fix. Some people are calling the sheriff's office. Some people are, we don't know how to do these things. We're taking photographs of people that are checking in every week into these hotel houses. But it's not a coordinated effort. So my concern, Sergeant Smith, is that you won't have records because we're doing it in all these different methods, and we don't feel like we're doing it very effectively for you or for us.
Right. And that makes sense. And to be honest with you, I would have to look into that and research that a little bit. I think the most appropriate organization or county government to deal with that would be code enforcement. And they should be able to, again, categorize and catalog all the calls for each address they go to as well.
They do that, but it's the same problem. They can give us a list per address, but there's no overview over the top. How many of calls have we had a month? So yes, code enforcement, as Jan's pointed out, is one of the places we go rather than the sheriff's department. So you have one side of it and the code enforcement group has another side of it.
No, I completely understand that. And I can think of, I'll look into it and ask, I don't have a lot to deal with that technical side of it on how our computer aided dispatch and our record system is managed in the computer system. But I can definitely look into it and ask and see what that would entail. Just off the top of my head, and I know it's not easy by any means, but if you can have people, just like you mentioned earlier, get everybody to kind of report to one section, whether that be the sheriff's office or code enforcement, and start a list of these addresses that are rental houses and are problems. If you can get a master list, if you will, of what these addresses are and the problem places you have, then I understand that people may call the different places, but then it's just a phone call or a quick email to these places, and they'll send all that stuff to you guys and organized by address. But I'll definitely look into it. Like I said, it's a little bit out of my expertise, if you will, the computer aided dispatch side of it, but we can check into it for sure.
That's awesome. And what I heard then is one of the things we might do is make sure we're collecting addresses, but also have people go to one place. Pick one of the two, code enforcement or the sheriff's, and make sure we're going to that same place while you look at how we can make the coding and the computer match. All right. And
Right.
we can also call code enforcement and have the same discussion with them. So if we have to do it from both ends, we're happy to do it that way.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jean?
and even if you decide to call, if it's a noise issue or a disturbance going on in the middle of the night at one of these places, and you call the sheriff's office to report it, you can always then still meet with the deputy and ask them, hey, can you make sure that you put in the comments of this call that this is a one of the hotel houses, one of the malls that we're dealing with. So that way, and then that stuff will all be recorded and documented, as well as everything else.
Great idea.
Can I just say something, Jean?
Yep.
Yes, for disturbances or things that are happening outside of normal business hours, they have to call the sheriff because there's no one at code enforcement on the weekends or in the evenings. So if it's a disturbance, illegal parking, some sort of ruckus going on, people have to call the sheriff. They can't wait to call code enforcement. Now, during business hours, you can call code enforcement. And I would think a good thing might be if they do call the sheriff, that then follow up when the office is open, call code enforcement and let them know that they have called the sheriff to that address. So that would keep documenting things. For that's
a great idea. That's a great idea. And like I said, meet with the deputy and ask for a case number. We every time we go to a place, we generate a case number or a run number for everything we do, and that's yours. All you do, if you ask for it, they'll be more than happy to give you one. Ask them for a case number for what happened. It's probably not going to be a very lengthy report, but it's what documents it, the date, the time, the location, and a brief synopsis of what went on. And then you can also add that to code enforcement and give them that case number, and they can cross-reference it with everything that we're doing.
If you show up at a site and maybe whatever was happening is over, or you don't see that there's a problem, do you still have a case number?
Yes.
So if you show up, there should be a case number.
Yep. If somebody calls us and asks us to respond, there will be a case number attached to that.
Okay. Because we've instructed people, yes, to request case numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you don't want to meet with them, in person, or, you're out of town or what, you can also ask them, hey, can you please have the deputy call me, give the dispatcher your phone number, and the deputies more often than not will be more than happy to give you a call just to say, hey, what's going on? This is what we did. This is, we got there and there was nothing going on, or we got there and there was, a big fight or loud music or whatever it was. And give you a brief synopsis of what's going on.
Right. I did have one thing. I'm still running into the bikes at night when I walk. You see my sunset picture. So I'd like to look at the sunsets that are watching my back for the bike, if that could happen. The electric bikes are on the beach.
Yeah, we went out there again. We've done it a couple times now, and made contact with the company that's going out there. The last two times that we've kind of spot checked it, if you will, they were not in violation. They were pedaling the bikes. They did not have the electric assist working, and they were just like normal bicycles.
Okay.
We will continue to spot check that to make sure that they stay in compliance.
I'm not out there now, so I don't know, but there are generally, the problem is when they get into groups, then all of a sudden they're running their engines, and that's when it's really challenging because now you got to wait for 4 or 5 or 10 to pass before you can start walking again.
And Sergeant Smith, I got video of them using the motors, and we, instead of yelling at them, we asked them, how do you like that motor assist? Every single one of them said it was great.
Yeah, I think we talked about that, Mike, because that's what kind of prompted us to go out there this past time and do another spot check. But if they keep doing it, we'll catch them eventually. Just be patient with us. We're not going to give up on it. We're going to keep working at it to make sure they stay in compliance with the county ordinance.
Okay. And remember, the one guy was trespassed from my property. So if you need me to come out there and have him arrested, I will be right there.
Yeah, we definitely will.
Thank you.
Is that it?
I think you've done great, and we were so glad to hear how well it went over the July 4th, and hope that it will continue to be really positive. I think our family had a good experience, and we weren't at the most busy area, although it was close. And I did notice that even with a lot of people out there and sort of lean-tos and whatnot, it was very relaxed. It did not seem like they were really trying to be disruptive. I mean, there was all ages, and it was a real nice experience. So hope for more of that. Thank you.
I haven't seen such big crowds. That was a big crowd. That was a great crowd. And I honestly, it went real smooth I'm between the public beach and the village, and it usually takes until midnight to clear the traffic, and it was cleared early. I would have said by 11, it was cleared pretty well. So thank you.
We had a very positive, yeah. Thank you so much. And I was thinking we will like to meet sometime soon. We talked about an opportunity maybe to meet every so often. We used to, about every 3 months, I think, have a community meeting just for an hour or so with some folks on the key. Maybe that's something, Sergeant Smith, we could start again, just to go over stuff so it doesn't, we get our thoughts together on a project or something that we might be able to do together, including if we need to have a coordination on the hotel houses, even like a protocol that could be consistent, for example. I think good folks that want to work on some things like that with you, because we know you can't shoulder all of that. It is a code enforcement issue. And if we had a good collaboration, that would go a long way.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help out and take part in anything I can. So I appreciate it. And thank you for letting me be here today.
Great. Thanks for coming.